Hello, I'm Carolyn Jones with the Foster Parent Kinship Care Training Institute. Today we're talking about kinship care. What is kinship care? And why is it so vitally important to the fabric of our nation? Do you know that between 53 and 57,000 American adults are caring for non-biological children who are members of their extended family? This is a wonderful, wonderful gift that those individuals are giving to these children because it ensures permanence in the family and keeps the child within the culture. We're going to be talking today with a number of people who have been in the kinship care program from different perspectives. We're joined by Jack Kincaid from Spokane, who is an adoptive parent and also a foster parent. He and his wife are providing care at this current time for cousins who are ages 2 and 4. We're also joined by Bernice Moorhead, who is a retired social worker and has been the caregiver for her granddaughter. And we're joined by Devante Guest, who is the child or the son, 4th grader, of Carlita Boyd. Carlita grew up with her grandma, Bernice, from the age of 7, and we're really pleased to sit next to her today because she's our colleague and works with adolescents in foster care in Tacoma. And to my left, we have Ms. Celeste Carey, who is the State Program Manager for Foster Care Kinship Care Program. And so welcome to all of you, and thank you for coming and sharing your expertise on this important subject. I'm going to ask some questions about kinship care from your perspective, and just jump in and answer this as the spirit moves here. What is your biggest reward in caring for a relative child?
For me, the reward was knowing that that child or the children were safe and that we had an opportunity to continue a relationship without any breaking in between time. Had they been placed someplace else, we may not have had the freedom to continue to be together and to provide safety. It was just a reward for me to know that the children were as close to a parenting figure that they had had in the past.
Mm-hmm. I think I could echo that. The biggest reward has been to be able to keep the family together, to be able to have contact with the extended family and not have the outside direction from other people outside, and also to keep the kids in a position where the things that are important to the family, they learn those as they grow up.
So a lot of the cultural nuances and just the permanence and the connectiveness is continued, even though there is this trauma of being separated on a daily basis.
Yeah, we were able to keep them in the same school, have the same friends, and made it as positive as we could, and continue to travel to family back in Iowa, and just continue to do the things they did when they were with the parents. Yeah.
And so you and your husband Charles were how old when you assumed this duty?
Oh, we were a lot younger than we are now. So I think we were 50, in our 50s, and we're ready to sort of move to a life of just the two of us, and the children came, and it's changed our whole lifestyle, and also brought an opportunity for us to grow and to learn from a whole different perspective.
And that's an interesting point, because just when you were ready to be empty nesters, this happened, and it turned out to be a gift.
Yeah, we were getting ready to perhaps buy like a 2-seated car. We ended up buying a 15-passenger van. Yeah.
Well, Carlita, from your perspective, as the recipient of her nurturance, what was that like, and what were the advantages, do you see?
I would say some of the advantages were that it was a stable home, and that we knew that we were always going to have clothes. We knew we were going to have food on the table, that with them that we would probably have even more like financial benefits than even staying with our mom.
And yet you didn't have to adjust to going into a stranger's home.
Right.
Because you knew Grandma. Yeah. And so, Devante, I'm going to ask you an important question, and that is, I'd like to know from your perspective what similarities you see between Grandma and Mom. What are the common things that you see?
The similarities of my Grandma and Mom are that they're very nice to me. They help keep the family together when we have arguments, have a good attitude, and believing in me and encouraging me.
So they make you feel like you're the best thing since sliced bread, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? You are. You are that. That's for sure. Well, thank you. So you can see then that Mom has adopted and learned a lot of stuff from Grandma, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's just really good, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, talk about, Jack, how caring for your children has changed the relationship that you and your wife have. How has that changed?
The relationship between my wife and I has become closer because of having to deal with issues that 20-year-olds are supposed to deal with. As you said, they're 4 and 2 years old, and I'm 60, and so it's like it's time for me to sit back and relax, but I can't do that yet. So there's the closeness that happened between the two of us. In the family, it was interesting that sometimes the factions in the family, if you will, keep shifting, and so it's sometimes really difficult because the aunt wants to be the mom, but the mom is now us, and so it becomes a strange situation sometimes. That takes a little juggling, but basically the family is just pleased with the fact that we're able to move around and be the constant caregivers for the kids, which also gives the kids the stability they need.
Right, right. So I can see where it could potentially put you in a difficult situation with the biological parent, feeling somewhat threatened by the fact that this other relative has stepped in to parent the child.
That's where we found our biggest difficulty was for the first year or so was Mom wanted visits and Dad wanted visits, and Mom and Dad couldn't get along with each other, and so it was a matter of how did we provide the kids contact with their parents and the rest of the extended families on both sides without interfering with or causing more trouble between the parents, letting the kids see the animosity that the parents had toward each other at the time. That was the hardest obstacle to overcome by taking the kids.
I could see where that would be a challenge.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's even a bigger challenge than that, and that is what is the real relationship, and what does Mom feel, and how does Mom feel threatened, and how do you mellow that out, because Mom's still your daughter, and yet you have children that you're responsible for, and how do you not show when you're very angry with Mom and do it in a way that's productive rather than have it a negative impact. And then to define what that role is with Mom, what's your relationship going to be? And I don't think that you ever saw that. I believe Khalida is grown now, and that we're still dealing with those issues, whether there's jealousy about where you go on holidays, because we have big families, and the families come to my house on holidays, and Mom's there. And the struggle is whether or not they should be going to Mom's at Christmas time, Thanksgiving. And so it's always, I believe the struggle will remain there. And what role? Am I the grandmother? Am I the parent? And so it switches, and we have to be flexible enough to sort of dance with the music and make the family as healthy as possible.
I can go along with that really a lot because I'm the dad in the house, right? I'm now the parent of these two children, but yet I'm the grandpa to some other ones, and so when they're all together, it's interesting to hear them. The kids will revert to calling me grandpa, or the other children, a couple of my grandkids will call me Daddy Jack when they're all together. So it's a bit of confusion about what my title is and not what my role is, but what my title is.
Right. And for us, something as simple as looking at the will. We have 6 children. We said, well, we'll just divide everything up in 6 parts. Well, do the grandchildren who you raise also have a greater part, or do you treat them the same as you do the other grandchildren? And so all of these brings about some issues that you deal with later on in life, in the life of the children.
And these are difficult topics, not topics that you could really comfortably share with just, anybody. So where do you turn for support? Where do you kind of go to fathom these things out and to share ideas?
I turn to Carlita for a lot of support, and because she's so honest and so frank with me. Carlita helps me to deal with some feelings I have, and we just sort of talk it through. And I have a couple of children I can talk to. I don't think I could engage with her mom in that conversation, but I can engage with Carlita in that conversation. And also friends, friends I have worked with in the past, and say, what do you think? And just getting some encouragement, and even perhaps from now that, I know Jack, and from another person who may be going through the same situation, sort of supporting each other and saying, here's some options.
So a support group for kinship providers can be a really important thing, especially if you're the only person in your social circle that's in that situation. It may seem like the parade is passing you by because you're now doing a different track. So.
Right. I think that no matter what situation you're going through, you need support.
Yeah.
But in this, it is so complicated. I think a support group is absolutely necessary. We had a support group. Our support group was through our church and friends. What happened then, we had friends. One of the good things, we had friends who were younger because they had children the same age as the grandchildren, and they had some skills they could share with me that I didn't have available to me when I was raising my children. So that's where the support come in. Had one friend who gave counseling and tutoring, and you can't do it without support. Backup child care. Our family was really supportive. We didn't have to change our lifestyle. When my husband and I got ready to go out of town, someone stepped in and became a parent. They moved into the home. Uncles, aunts, and so we were able to work together. You can't do it without some type of support.
That's one thing that mirrors what I've done too. It's that the whole family became closer together.
Yes.
You asked me about the relationship with my spouse, but the whole family came closer together because they saw the need for us to be able to get away, for us to be able to continue on with doing the things that we had done and be able to do those things. And so the support was there. Somebody would step in, babysitting, moving into the house, just a few hours off sometimes.
Wow, that's great. That's really great. So kinship providers have a choice. They can offer kinship care, or they can become licensed foster parents in the state of Washington. Anybody have feelings or thoughts about which way has been better to go?
I have some really strong feelings, and part of that has been the fact that is due to the fact that I was a foster parent for so long. One of the difference between raising somebody else's children and kinship kids or relative children is I didn't think that I needed the department as involved in what was going on, the day-to-day operations of our family, the issues, and so we chose very definitely not to become licensed again. Also, when I decided not to be a foster parent, we had set up some things that would not have been allowed. We have some large dogs that would not have been allowed under the current licensing, and so that wouldn't have worked for us anyway. But it was our decision not to do that because we thought we and the family were in a better position to manage these children than any of the foster kids.
One of the things that a lot of folks get confused about, or kinship providers get confused about, is that becoming a licensed foster parent is only available when children are placed by the department. Children that are in an arrangement that are agreed between the parents and the relatives aren't eligible to become licensed foster parents. Usually a lot of relatives will call me and want to become licensed, and unfortunately if they're not involved with our department, licensing is not an option for them.
Right.
So that's, when the department is involved, then I think relatives need to really look at what is the best option, what works for their family.
That's true.
And I think that's what I would have done had that been an option. I didn't think about what options are there. I thought about, here are 3 children Sunday night with no place to go, and how do I best provide care for them? And then you look at, well, where are you going to get insurance, medical, et cetera, et cetera. And so the department was somewhat involved with me, mainly because I have some connection there who helped me to look for medical and child care, because that's a real big piece of helping you make a decision. It would not have been as smooth for us had we had to pay for child care and medical. It would have been a hardship on the family and would perhaps cause some crisis. So I think the more support a family get, and I'm sure Jack will agree, the better off the whole family unit is, whatever that support's needed, whether it's medical,
Financial.
child care. And so the answer for me would be depending on what the family needs. If that's what they need, what's the best? Sit down and do a pros and cons and what meets their need. Because what we wanted was a smooth transition and a stress-free environment. That's what we wanted for these children, because we knew they were going through enough and not to have to be under stress. So I just think whatever works for that particular family. So that means you got to get the family involved. If the children are old enough, get them involved in the decision. And the rest of the family, outside of the ones that live in the home, what are you willing to contribute?
Right, right. And so really make it an extended family participation.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the children grow from that.
Yeah.
You know, we live in such a situation these days where people are living thousands of miles away from their extended family, and you know, grandparents are just not down the block anymore.
Right.
And I think our culture has kind of suffered from that, you know. So bringing all of those ties together again. Jack, what about community resources? What has been of help in parenting these children?
Well, in the area of medical, we have used the department's TANF program to get medical for the children, and also there's a small stipend, but most of that was unnecessary for us. But that's the main resource. But also, because of that contact, some of the younger child, the 2-year-olds, developmental delays we've been able to get tied into some folks that we might not have otherwise been able to afford by being able to use the state medical coupons.
That's great. That's very good. So it's really important then for people who are providing care for family members to somehow get to a place where you'll get that information and somebody can kind of hook you up. Because if you're just out there doing this informally and no one's helping you with the resources, you might be missing out on things that could make life a lot easier for both yourself and the child.
And I think that's one of the reasons that relative support groups might be an informational for relative caregivers when they don't know where else to turn.
I agree 100%. I was sitting here thinking, I may not want foster care, but I may need to know, I can't afford an attorney. How do I protect these children? How do I keep them where mom can't go to school and snatch them out of school? That would be some of my concerns. So how can I legally protect these children, and what are my choices? And those are some of the questions I think one needs to ask and before they can make that final decision. So foster care may be that protection you need, or you don't want to be involved with the department, then how do you file for third-party custody? And I think that's the information and support we need to get out there for the group. And people within the group, I believe the support group may not have all the answers when they walk in the door, but I'd be willing to bet you they would have it when they left there, because you can start the conversation and someone in there will have something that can help anyone that's there.
And most jurisdictions now have court facilitators within the Superior Court that will help you fill out the application for third party. But then, you know, I mean, it's just, it can be pretty intimidating, can't it, you know, to go into court and just kind of do that on your own. So a support group can kind of give you that that reinforcement that you need
And
as
we,
well.
we did that with a neighbor, because we had on another grandchild started the process of third-party custody, and we were able to point that person either to the department, or we would work with them to help them do that. So the support is so important.
In terms of case dispositions, you know, if you had your druthers, if you had to choose between returning the child to the home, adoption, legal guardianship, or long-term relative agreement, what would you say would be your pick? What do you see as the most advantageous position? Since we, you know, don't want to leave children in limbo, what is the best way to go about that, to offer that permanence and that security? Carlita, what's your thought on that?
I would think that long-term relative placement, because I felt, I mean, I always felt safe, and I never thought that I would be leaving. I knew that I was loved and cared for, and I mean, I think that it helped me to even be able to go to school, you know, get up and want to, you know, I felt okay. I felt safe. I knew that I was safe in being with my grandparents.
That there was a future there, and that you also know the history. You also
Yes.
know from whom you come.
Yes.
You know, and I think that that's something that we have to also consider as being part of permanence.
I honestly think that the very best place for kids is with their biological mom and dad, and so if it's at all possible, I think that returning home is where they ought to go. But and to go to the other end of the spectrum, you gave us a list of choices. I think the very worst one is adoption, because that leads to the terminating of the parent-child relationship of the child with the biological parents. And if they're within the family, I think that can be terribly detrimental to the child. I think it could be terribly detrimental to the family. I spoke earlier about some of the factions that happen in the family. I can't think of a better way to draw a wedge between family members than to terminate the parental rights.
Right.
My own personal belief, and the thing that worked well for us, was the third-party custody, because it allowed us, number one, to have a certain amount of support, but it allowed us to also be able to deal with the children on a much more normal kind of setting, with us making decisions, not having to go to the social worker for the decision, not having to go to court to get permission. So it was the right thing for us at the time. And I believe that it has helped us be able to keep some sort of continuity and calm waters, if you will, within the family at the same time as being able to keep the children safe and in a secure place.
And I think that's interesting, because I've had a few cases where adoption was the choice of relatives because things were so chaotic in their family that to keep the child safe, terminating parental rights was the only way. So I think it really is, like you said, what is going to work for that family. And there are some different options that are available for permanence. And I think that when you're looking at providing a lifetime commitment to children, figuring out what works best is really important.
What's safe for the child? Where will that child develop? I too feel the first choices for family, biological parent, and then family. And if that's not a safe place, and children are going to be stressed by that, then we do need to look at it. It's too bad when you break the family ties, but I think that's what, because children have questions. I just visit my grandson, that's Carlita's brother we had, in France, and all he wanted to talk about was, Grandma, how did I do this when I was a baby? Because he now has boys. Did I sleep well? Did I do this? Did I behave well? When I was real little, way back, how did I get along with my brother, my sister? They have so many questions that sometimes only families have. You can only document so much. Please bring the pictures. I have picture albums, and that's where they go back and reconnect. Pictures, report cards, everything. So they have all those questions. How often did I have to crawl in bed with you? It's just a lot of things that's lost when you break the family ties. But we do have to look at what's the advantage, what advantage is that child? How can we make that child the best possible citizen growing up? safety, education, knowing that you don't have to move, being nervous, am I going to move from this place to another, knowing that as long as things, that you're there, as long as things are working out or not working out with mom, for example. Because had it worked out with mom, our plan was always to return the children home. We didn't want to steal the children. We continued to try to work with mom. Our plan was to do a transition thing, but we were going to always be there and be the safety net. We were never going to give that up. Nobody could take that from us. The big arm, we're ready. When you need to, you run back home. And we tried it once and it didn't work. So they knew we were there. And I think that's an advantage. And sometimes, you know, I think it's an advantage to have more than one set of parents. Again, if you want to look at it in a positive way, you have the opportunity to be with someone who is older and has wisdom. And I think sometimes that's embarrassment for kids. They all got these young, vibrant parents, and here goes this old woman, and she's a parent. But anyway, it worked out. I didn't think they were ever ashamed of us or anything. So we just sort of worked as a community. They may have been, but they didn't tell us.
No, we didn't tell them. We didn't tell. We knew it hurt their feelings. Maybe not grandma, but
So in terms of the technicality of how we as a department interface with kinship providers, maybe you could kind of lead us in an exploration of what really is required when the department is involved. So, you know, a dependency's been filed, or we're looking at something like removing the children. How does that look?
Well, as Bernice and Jack both said, our primary goal is to keep children in their biological home. But when we can't do that safely, our first option is to look to see what relatives, what extended family members. By Washington law, we can place with what's called relatives of specified degree, which means individuals that through marriage, blood, adoption, or Native American ICW tribal definition, we can place with those individuals without being licensed. Anyone outside of that group will have to become a foster parent, a godparent, or the next door neighbor, or a teacher. Those individuals would have to be licensed. When we place with children, we want to again make sure that they're in a safe environment. That's our primary goal, is to keep children safe. So there are some requirements that relatives will have to undergo to be a placement resource for children. They have to successfully complete a criminal background check. So that means that we're going to check our child abuse and child neglect records to make sure there's no allegations of abuse, that there are no history of chronicity, that there's no concerns that we have around there being some type of legal or trouble that folks may have raising children that may have been in their own lifetime. We're going to check with the Washington State Police. We're going to check with tribal police if appropriate. And when individuals, we're a Navy, Army, Air Force community here, so if a person hasn't lived in Washington for 3 consecutive years, there also is an FBI background check that's conducted. Relative caregivers also have to make children available for appointments, and sometimes, like you mentioned, that's really difficult because sometimes kids say, I don't want to go see mom, I don't want to go see dad, I don't want to go to the psychiatrist, but part of our commitment to keeping children healthy is making sure that they're available for those different appointments. And sometimes that causes some conflict with the children and with the relative caregivers. We also are interested in knowing who has access to our children. So all individuals that are living in the household that are 16 years or older or that have unsupervised access to children, the babysitter, Uncle George who stops in and maybe stays at the house while you run to the store, all those individuals are going to also have to have background checks. And once those checks come back and they're successfully completed, that will be no problem with having, as long as it's part of the case plan, having those individuals involved with the family. We also ask that relative caregivers let us know any concerns they have about the child being placed in the home. They might, as you said, Bernice, have some difficulty with keeping the parents or keeping the children safe. And part of what the piece that the department offers is assisting relatives in keeping those children safe. Sometimes it's really difficult to say no to the parents, and we become the assistants in providing that type of cooperation. The relative also has to cooperate with the case plan, and I mentioned that before. And what the case plan is usually tells what the parents, what the child has to do, and how we're going to get the child back home or provide some permanence to the child. These we also have court orders, and some of the court orders may be through the juvenile court or they may be through the tribal court. Now, one of the additional pieces with relative caregivers, when we place with children, we place with relatives, we automatically ask if the children have any Native American ancestry. And we are required to adhere to the Indian Child Welfare and the other federally recognized requirements around working with Native children. So it's very complicated. I'm not even going to try to go at it here. But relatives need to know that if the children do have Native American ancestry, there may be different requirements that are involved with those children that may change how we do case plans and what the children can and cannot do.
Great, thank you. While we're talking about Native American ancestry and tribal relationships, you had spoken earlier about the challenge that very often grandparents and family have in terms of accommodating different practices when a child comes to your home.
Right.
Could you kind of expand on that?
Yes, I had grandchildren who lived on the reservation in Montana, and their mom was Crow Indian, and they came from Montana to my house, and I don't know whether what made the difference, but geographically, I think people's food habits, for example, are different, and they ate a lot of wild meat, not a lot of salt, and I had the children for a couple weeks, and the oldest boy, when I served him broccoli, finally said, "Grandma, you guys eat trees too?" And that was a red flag for me, that he wasn't used to the type of food. Didn't think anything about it. Their family, so here's the food. So I quickly got on the phone, called Grandma in Montana and said, what type of meals did you prepare, and what did they really like? Well, I learned how to cook a whole different way, and they taught me that. It was just insight. I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought about that. So we assume because children stay with a relative know everything and remember everything. Again, back to the support group. Remember, these children have different practices. They may be going to a different type of church than what you go to, and we need to consider that. And those children did. They attended the Catholic Church and their own church and their religion in their tribe. And so to learn about them, we went back over, did some of the touring of the tribe, and went to celebrations. I think we have to really go a little further with these children than we do with our own. And so it was just like a big insight for me. I go, wow, I wasn't fixing the right thing. And I was introducing them every day to something new and not even know it. And what they wear, the clothing, what are they used to? And it may be something that you don't approve of, then how do you gradually get them into what's acceptable practice? What do you wear to this place versus what you used to wear? So it's all a learning experience, and then how do we sell that?
And I think that's a really important piece, because children are being taken from one environment where the bedtime's this time, where they eat these meals, where they are allowed to stay out maybe till 8 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden they're put into a different environment where the rules are different. And kids are going, and Carlita's going, and sometimes that's a part of the family communication that doesn't happen, and that causes a lot of stress in the family. So knowing that that's part of the process of becoming a new family, basically, that it's okay to talk about it, and that it really does need something that needs to be discussed. You know, not establishing a bedtime. Well, Grandma, 7 o'clock for a 16-year-old is You know, maybe we can negotiate to about 9 or 10. So those communications are important.
Khalida can sure speak
What was
to
that
that.
like? Yeah.
Oh, because when we lived with my mom, it was like we would go outside and we would play all day. We probably didn't have a bedtime. If we did, I don't remember. But I know going to my grandparents' house, it became a lot more structure. You go to bed at 8:30. You get up at this time. This is what time dinner is. When you get home, you do your homework, and you will, clean up. And we didn't go outside and play all day. We had to help around the house and stuff like that. So that's true. Going over those expectations probably wouldn't have been so hard if we knew, in the beginning. But we did adjust to that.
She's absolutely right. We didn't say, okay, here are the rules for here. We just said, okay, this is what we do, and this is how we go to bed. This is what we do when we get home. And not sitting down saying, putting some value to it. One of the other things I didn't do very well as I look back, and Khalid and I have talked about a lot, is getting in touch. What were they feeling? What are you feeling? What are you struggling with? How do you feel that you don't know where mom is? And how can I help you with that? We didn't get into that, and after becoming an adult, Khalida started talking about some of those feelings, and I can get an aha in a minute, and I can also confess when I know I missed something, but I can share that with other people, saying we have to stay in touch with what children are feeling. And Khalida does that very well with Devante, and she's taught me to do that with my adult children, even with my husband of 50 years. I can say, what are you feeling, dear? But it's something I learned. And so when we talk about what were some of the values and the good things that came out of it, it's what I'm continuing to learn. And the adult relationship between two women, how important that is, and that we have, and sharing with each other. So all of that are lessons learned from me. And I keep coming back, Jack, to the support group. Those are things that support people can share to make life richer, even richer for people who are caring for, especially relative care. Yes.
So looking back into the future.
I'm looking into the future.
Okay, looking back from the future, Jack. What do you think these two little ones are going to be thinking and feeling as they get to be adults?
Well, I'm hoping to have even close to the relationship that I've seen here this afternoon, that they know that they were cared for and loved, that they know that their biological parents were cared for and respected, and that their thoughts and their feelings were part of whatever works out, that they're looked at as individuals, that their strengths and their weaknesses we're able to see. I think that part of the things that I talked about earlier, that's the hardest thing for me is to think about what it's like to be 60 years old with a 2-year-old running around the house is going to be one of the advantages to them, because as 60 I can look back and say there's maybe some things that I could have done, there's lots of things I could have done differently, but one of them is to sit back and wait and let things kind of take their own course, and be able to not be in that every minute controlling kind of situation. And you know what? I think they're going to come through really well.
That's great.
I want to just add to that, the reward for me is for these children, now that they're grown, and to tell me, you did a good job, you did the right thing, we're glad we were there. We didn't always feel that when they were there, because we didn't know, we knew we were dealing with broken promises. We didn't know we were dealing also with a communication outside that was coming in saying, like, Grandma took you away from us, and me, etc. We weren't quite aware of all of the things that was these children that was tugging the children. And I remember when the youngest one was about 16, we were sitting out on our front porch and just the two of us talking, and he started to cry, and he said, Grandma, had not been for you and Papa, he said, I would have been in the gang or dead. And I just go, wow, I did do something good. Here's a 16-year-old talking about those things. We didn't allow them, and perhaps we were too strict. We didn't allow them to go to parties like their friends did all the time. We needed to know who was there and why were you having a party. Couldn't go to a party. You know, you're celebrating something. What do you say? And perhaps we were a little too strict because we wanted to make sure that safety was there. And had to do it over again, though, I think I may not have changed anything. And that is a reward for me, that I know in my conscience I did the right thing.
And I think that's a really important part of being a relative caregiver, is doing what you think is right and doing what you know is best for the child.
Yes.
And sometimes that makes you make hard decisions.
Right. And I just cannot thank the department enough for pursuing this further and stressing this is a policy rather than snatching children and placing them in foster care with someone they don't know. Even if the relative may not be able to provide quite as good a care as a foster parent, as long as that child is safe and have some connections, we still are very, very, very connected. I did raise one foster child, and we tried to treat him the same, but he has no obligation back to us to maintain a relationship. I think relatives are obligated to maintain that tie as much as they can. Even if there's conflict, we're obligated to continue to try to work that conflict. But I don't feel I'm obligated to try to contact a couple of young men that we had in our home as foster parents, providing them a good place to stay. I think at some point they have a choice of cutting that tie. These guys don't have that choice.
Your grandma, you're there.
I will hunt them down. I will walk to Mississippi and get them all the way to France. Yeah.
This is such a great example, you two and this
Thank you.
family, of how this can be done right. And when a family member sacrifices and takes the responsibility on, how gratifying it is for you now to sit here and see this generation and yet another fine example of in this young man.
Yes.
Although I think we've become boring too. One of the things that I think is important for us to say also with regard to this is the importance of education, the importance of kinship providers availing themselves of the coursework that we offer, free and accessible in every region in this state. All you need to do is to talk to your social worker who's dealing with you and the child in your care, and ask about training. Also, I'd like to call your attention to the fact that we have a website, the Foster Parent Training Institute, and you can access that at www.wa.gov/DSHS/foster-parents, all one word. These courses are designed to help people who are caring for children understand some of the technical, clinical issues and help you be better advocates for the children. And so we wouldn't put these children in your care without the knowledge and the support that can be offered through the program. We want to thank you for your time today. We want to thank these wonderful people for sharing their stories. And really, our country is richer for their having been here today and having stepped to the plate. For more information about kinship care, please ask your child's social worker for a copy of the Relative's Guide to Child Welfare Services, also available at Relative Kinship Care Support Groups, a list of which will appear at the end of this broadcast. This is what it's all about. This young man is such a shining example of what happens when we do this right, what happens to subsequent generations when we step in and support children in need. Please remember this bright, shining face and know that you too can make a difference.
If someone is on frequency, they have to get off.